Hello, all viewers and listeners. Welcome once again to this episode of Pathways to the Ivies. We're resuming kickstarting a 2026 series, and this time, for the very first time in our opening episode, we have the beautiful, the wonderful Vedika Arora. She is from the Mount Carmel School in Delhi and has secured an admit at the Stanford University for fall 2026. Vedika, welcome to the show. Super, super proud and privileged to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's so exciting for me to be here, and I hope to contribute a lot to the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who want to get into Stanford and knowing what did you do and how did you get in and how did your profile influence the decision to get into Stanford is pivotal. Before I get into having you introduce yourself, tell me something. Was this an admit that you expected? Or was it like a bolt from the blue and you realize, oh my God, I just made it to Stanford?
I'm an international student. I'm seeking a full ride, and I started preparing officially for college abroad in at the end of my 11th. So I never really expected that I would get into such a prestigious and rather it is the best university in the world for me. So it was beyond my dreams. It was an absolutely crazy acceptance for me, and I'm still processing it. I'm super super grateful, and yeah, it's been amazing.
Perfect. I'm so glad to know. I mean, when you look at admits where you kind of feel like the applicant feels that probably I couldn't have made it, but they made it, gives wings to people who think that, Stanford is almost impossible because, it sets an example that if you made it, anybody else can make it given their intent and their preparation was in the right level. So we're going to use this episode to understand what did you do. So Vedaka, go about introducing yourself. What have you done? What board? Which major in Stanford and all the good stuff.
So, hi everybody, I'm Vedika Arora. I'm from New Delhi, India. I go to Mount Carmel School, Dwarka, and I'm from a CBSE board. Normally, kids who apply to these, prestigious colleges, they're all from Ivy boards or doing A levels. In my school, I didn't really have any seniors who went to any Ivies, or I didn't have any particular pathway that I could follow. So this was all really new for me. It was completely, I feel like a completely original experience. I didn't have any reference point around me who I could, base my path towards. But I think that's also what helped me build such a unique narrative for myself. So I can always remember, like, I was really interested in how, systems, especially legal and political ones, shape people's access to opportunity and dignity. I've always been very passionate about this particular topic. I think that people should be aware about their rights. People should be civic citizens, and that was all. A lot of my work came from noticing that gap between rights that exist on paper and what people actually experience. And across these experiences, I've also become really interested in how we can make these sort of complex systems, be it the judicial aspect of our country, the judiciary of a country, or simply voter rights, voting campaigns. I want to make them more accessible for people, and I want to work for the people, and I want these rights to work for the people that they're meant to serve. So that was what I've been passionate about. That is what that is what my academic interests were when I applied for Stanford University in economics, public policy, political science, and sociology. So I hope to get right into it, the podcast now.
Awesome. That's awesome to know that you had a very clear, defined interest. Did you do an early action, or were you a regular decision candidate for Stanford?
I did apply early decision to Williams College where I got rejected, and I applied to Stanford in the RD cycle. So one thing that was, I think, really unique about my application, not unique, I think very tiresome for me, was that I applied to a total of 49 colleges across the world, 38 being in the US and 9 being in, wait, sorry, 10 being in, 10 being everywhere else in the world.
Which are your other admits other than Stanford? Of course, Stanford is the one that you're going to go ahead with. It's no brainers. But what are the other colleges and other acceptances that you got?
So I got a full ride to Stanford. So of course that's where I'm gonna go. But I also got a full ride from Carleton College, I'm super privileged that I experienced that. It's also a brilliant liberal arts college, top 8 in the US. I also received a full ride from Wesleyan University, and I was also admitted to Drexel in the US. Apart from that, I got my acceptance from UCL, ranked number 9 in the world in the UK, from King's College London, which is again an extremely good school for law, and the University of Warwick. And in Canada, I also received my acceptances from University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, and York University.
Awesome. I have a question before we go ahead to the academics bit of the podcast. You mentioned that you have a full ride at Stanford and you also had a full ride at some other school, and a couple of places which also gave you full ride. A lot of people, and especially in India, in a country where the dollar rate is consistently going up as compared to the Indian rupee, are do seek financial aid, and when you just generally ask around with the scenario, most people just say that, hey, it's difficult to get a financial aid or a full ride or even a partial aid. So what do you think is super important from the perspective of an international student to get any form of scholarship or merit-based aid, and what is it that was on your profile that you think made you get that full ride?
Well, firstly, of course, college admissions are a huge mystery for anyone that's involved. In the US, I particularly believe right now that it's sort of like a lottery system simply because of the huge amount of applications that come in. I feel like there are certain things that a college looks for in each class, in each year, I mean, and that is how they choose their students accordingly, because the list is just full of qualified candidates throughout, and there is always a particular like thing or a particular dimension that a college is looking for, and they will eliminate everyone else who doesn't fit that dimension, simply because that is the only way they can actually choose people. How do you choose people from how do you choose like 1000 students from an applicant pool of 65,000 students and more? It's absolutely impossible. There are just certain extremely niche things that first you need to do to get into the first round, and then you need to do to so for example, your academics threshold needs to be present. I gave the SAT, the standardized admission test, and I got a 1510 on that. But when I had applied for my early decision round, I didn't have that score. I didn't have a 1510. So I think that's why I got rejected in the preliminary round, because I didn't have that academic backing to lift my profile up. Because your verifiability comes from your scores. So I remember absolutely grinding for the December SAT, because it was the one, like it was my one last chance before RD, and I gave it my everything, and voila, I got a 1510. So I was like, now I need to make this worth it, and I applied to like so many colleges in RD. But yeah, I think your academic threshold is the first thing that takes you to the spot that makes you competitive for everything else. After that, it becomes a thing of your activities, your honors, everything that builds an overarching framework of what your profile is going to be like. You can't have activities in completely different fields and expect an admission officer to relate to them. You need to ensure that there's a theme to it, there's a narrative to it. It showcases what you're passionate about, because your activities are ultimately who you are as a person. Your activities shouldn't be something that you're doing just to impress a college, because that's never going to work out. Your activities should be something that you do that is genuine to you, because then you can relate most to it. Then you will have that sort of passion to ensure that you're actually doing justice to what you're doing. And you will and obviously when you have to write about it, when you have to write how your activities originated, your how these all things began, what was your growth phase. When you have to write about that, you need to dig deep down and find what was the motivating factor, and that cannot come if you're doing this for a performance, if you're doing this to impress a college. It needs to be something that you like to do, because of course there's so many disciplines. I'm sure people can find at least one thing that they relate to, or one problem that they want to solve, or one niche that they want to be the best in. So there are multitudes of motivating factors, and having that overarching theme, I believe, is really important for what gets you there. And thirdly is, of course, the most important component, your essays. I cannot iterate this enough, but I believe that no one should be using AI while writing their essays, because it just removes the genuineness from it. It becomes a shell of the person you are. It's not actually who you are anymore. So I think that being very true to the person you are when you're writing essays, and ensuring that your origin stories for your activities and everything, they align with your essays, is also really important. So being genuine in your essays, and finding the right fit for you as a school, and looking at the values the school has, and imbibing them so particularly in yourself that you place them in your essays at varying points, is very important. So I think a multitude or a combination of these three factors is what places an applicant into the more meritorious aspect of it. Particularly, for example, if I talk about myself, or as to why I got a full ride, there is also a need aspect of it. They will not give a full ride to someone who can afford to pay 2 crores a year for a college degree. I mean, the fees is around 1 crore a year, but of course there are so many multitude of expenses and other things. So they will never ever give. I mean, if a person does not need it in that sense, they would never give it. So applicants who can be full pay, they should definitely apply as full pay, because it also gives you an edge in admissions. Because of course there's always a limited budget, a limited need, as someone, and colleges are need aware for international students mostly. Like there's a very few selected colleges like Amherst and Harvard, Yale, etc., who are very who need blind for international students. Apart from that, ultimately every college is need aware. So being need aware, being a need seeking applicant, aid seeking applicant, actually reduces your chance. And of course, being an international student is also in and of itself a really difficult aspect of you know applying. So if I come back to me, as to how I got it, again the combination of essays, activities, academic rigor. Because if you lack any of these one things, it will tick the admission officer off, I presume, from your application, because there's just so much of what they have to go through. So ensuring that you have that overarching narrative in your application is really important. So that when an admission officer is looking over your file, if they look here, they see the same qualities. If they look here, they see the same qualities that fit with your school. So I believe that's really important.
Understood. Understood. So you're saying that these three factors combined with the fact that you were a need aware student is what in hindsight actually got you your full aid at Stanford. Is that the correct way to rephrase this? Yeah, I think we're back. Yeah, so what I was reiterating, Vedika, is that in your case, the combination of these three factors, as well as a profile that was need aware, is what got you the full ride at Stanford. Am I right in rephrasing that?
Yes, I mean, of course, in your application, there's a checkbox that you need to tick that I require aid. So, and then you need to send in your CSS profile. So, that aspect, I mean, of course, you have to request for aid if you want to get it. And then, well, the merit aspect of it, because for any university, they will never ever give money to a student who they believe cannot, substantially be either deserving or worthy of it, or who they don't want to come to their institution, secondly, or thirdly who they think you know does not need it. If you need it, only then you
Of
get
course,
it. And
of course.
your application needs to be more, I think, in a way, more connected than an average applicant, because of the sole factors that come into play. So, because you're an international student, which definitely makes things harder for you than they already are. And secondly, because you're a need seeking applicant, which is what drives up the acceptance rate even lower for you.
Absolutely. So moving on to your, your academic subjects at as a part of your CBSE board and the honors that you've kind of won. Can you very briefly touch over your subjects and the honors that you think stood out for you in this application process?
For sure. So, as a CBSE student, I opted for the humanities with math stream, where I am pursuing English, political science, sociology, economics, and psychology, with maths being my additional subject, my sixth subject. So, if my board percentage is calculated, they choose the best five, and any best five will be taken for my percentage. So those are my CBSE subjects. And then for my honors, I have, let me just pull up the list. So my primary honors that I had listed were the All India rank 6 that I got in the international Olympiads qualifiers, and it was conducted by Macadamia Institute, which is like the official governing body for the official international Olympiad. I think one thing that um, is really important is to ensure that Olympiads are a really lucrative opportunity for corporates or companies or ed tech institutions to make students feel well regarded that they have received a national rank. But more oftentimes, these ed tech institutions aren't actually associated with any international governing body. I don't want to take names, obviously, but I think it's very important when students do these Olympiads to showcase in academic rigor. They are importantly noticing or identifying whether these Olympiads are actually the official verified bodies, or whether they're just capitalizing on an international Olympiad name. So thankfully I had verified that because it came through my school. So I knew that this was an official, it was the official Olympiad for economics for the world. And in the qualifiers, the top five students are chosen, and I got the sixth rank. So that was a bit, disheartening for me, but that was my honor. And then apart from this, I think Olympiads for academic rigor is very important in your honors. Apart from this, essay competitions and debate, or like any other activity. So for me, that any other activity was debating. It can be a sport for people, it can be any hobby, music, dance, everything has honors, rigorous honors that you can do. So for me it was debate. Now I'd actually started competitive debating very later on in my life. I was in my junior year, I was in 11th grade, and I started competitive debating in September, August of 11th grade. And then I went on to, receiving a scholarship at the Tevas Debate Club where I could study. Initially, I had, made like a 90 video debate playlist so that I could on YouTube, so that I could learn all the different kind of arguments, different kind of structures that you need to follow, different concepts that you need to know. And then I went on to, so I think debate was a very very important aspect of my honors. In fact, most of my honors are about debating, and essay competitions as well. So Immerse Education's essay competition, London School of Economics essay competition, Monomusumi's essay competition. I think these were the three competitions that I've mentioned in my um, application, where I received awards and debate and well the Olympiad. So those were my honors and those were my CBSE subjects.
Perfect. I also remember we were just chatting before we started this interview, and you brought up a very important point where you said that, colleges really value students with a debating profile. Like if you've done debates and you've actually, debated nationally, internationally, that's something that colleges kind of honor. So, would you be able
Yes.
to tell our viewers and listeners if, how, like, why do you say that debating is important, and how can somebody go about building a profile that is debating oriented?
So, well, debating is a sport. I think we should all agree on that because of the sort of rigor that it requires, the attention that it needs, the focus that it needs. And when I started competitive debating, as with any other thing, I felt that I was, really behind, especially when I looked at some of my other peers from some international schools who had already been in this field for a long, long time, and they'd been debating since they were in fourth, sixth at a competitive levels. That is, in the WSDC format or the BP British Parliamentary format. I think that debating is very important because it sort of showcases colleges that this student has a really analytical and cognitive aspect. Like it highlights that this student's cognitive abilities are good, better than average, because debating is a really really, if you really go into it, like I'm not talking about school level competitions, I'm talking about the WSDC competitions, or in general other national competitions or team qualifiers for a country. They're really really competitive, and the sort of dynamic that a person needs, or the sort of mind space that a person needs to be in, is very very different, very hard, very it needs a lot of endurance. And I think that is why colleges particularly value debating profiles, simply because of the aspect of knowing that because the student has shown so much rigor. So for example, in the WSDC format, you need to speak for 8 minutes at length. You can't use any phones or any other software like artificial intelligence. It's done offline, and you get an hour to prepare. So an hour to prepare an 8-minute speech for the 3 or 4 members in your team. All of them will speak for 8 minutes, apart from the last fourth speaker, who's the reply speaker. And again, building that theme in your debate, building those arguments in your debate, it all ties back to how you're going to navigate your college applications, which is why I feel debaters, because they're so accustomed to knowing how to persuade an audience or how to deliver certain arguments in a way that makes them more compelling to hear. That is why I think they also fare better when writing essays or when writing college applications, because you know what the admission, because you can sense what the admissions officer is looking for. If you engage in things like this where you're presenting to an audience. So that, I think that is why debating can really really help a person. And apart from that, I think in general, not just debating, I feel like if you choose an activity that like this, you better stick to it and you try to be the best in it. So, for example, I started competitive debating very late, like much later than my peers, and I managed to go to the national camp of India for debating, the team qualifiers for the WSDC competitions, which has a very very less acceptance rate, under 1%, I believe. And I managed to get there within 2 to 3 months of me competitive debating. And I realized my passion for this, and then I honed that skill a lot. So, winning the world, being second at the World Scholars Championship as a debater, as the overall champion, and in being also like second best, I think, debating team. Yeah, so I think that's also like really important for a person to see, because when you get recognition for your activities, you can really see that it is a becoming worth it, and b the college can also see that, okay, despite this child starting this activity in a limited amount of time, they have achieved so much, which showcases their talent, which showcases their potential. They managed to reach the toughest stage in India for a debater to navigate, which is the national camp, because that is when the team is chosen for India. And yeah, so that's why I believe that any sport or anything, any activity that you choose, you try to get as much recognition as it as you can. And I think particularly debating is also one of the better activities out there that a person can maximize their achievements in and use to hone their application in a better way, not only because college officers admire it a lot, but also because a debater themselves can navigate the stress of a college application in a better way.
Understood.
Yeah.
Fair enough, and that's good to know. And I'm glad that you participated in so many competitions and you won them. I think that in itself stands tall and talks about how great it would be. So that's that. I also wanted to take a little moment to kind of speak about your experiences. I see you have too many experiences, but I think I'm going to ask you, or you can just brush past each one of them. But I love how you were a youth, how you led the youth political campaign of BJP at the Delhi office. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? How did you get through it, and what was the impact you created?
So I think that one thing people should always remember is that being annoying or being very constant, being very persistent, following up will always get you something. It may not be what you want, but it will get you something. Your hard work, your effort will definitely be rewarded. So in a similar manner, I was in 10th grade, towards the end of my 10th grade, I started engaging in all of these things. And I noticed that Lok Sabha elections are coming up. I really wanted to be part of a campaign because I had already started feeling very passionate. I wanted to be involved in ensuring that our fundamental rights are practiced in the way that they're supposed to be, and that students, people who are voting, they actually get access, or they get exposure to what they are voting for. So I had approached the Delhi government office for the Bharatiya Janata Party, and that is where I had started my campaign. And we when we identified that there were approximately 2 lakh first time student voters.
Yeah, you can continue.
Yes. So I really think that effort and hard work will definitely get you something. So I remember when I was in 10th, I started becoming really passionate about these rights, and that's when I decided that Lok Sabha elections are coming up. I really want to be part of this, and I approached the Delhi government office of the Bharatiya Janata Party, particularly in my locality. So I directly went offline to the office, and I said that please let me be part of your campaign. I really want to be included. I want to understand more as someone who will be a voter in the future, and as someone who has identified that there are more than 2 lakh people in Delhi this year who will be voting for the first time in their lives. So I want to ensure that the policies which they need and they are being promised, they can actually understand them, or why or what a particular candidate has in their profile, or in their campaign that they have proposed to people. What lucrative ideas is the politician proposing that this people can really relate to? So that's when I went offline. I spoke with them, please let me do this, and they gradually relented after me, being very very persistent is how I'm gonna diplomatically frame it. But I just want to tell people that if you are if you definitely keep following up, it will give you a result. You can ask them, please refer me for some other things if I can't be part of this, or if I can, if I can't be part of this in the role that I want to be in, then you please make me part of this in a role that you feel I'll be a better fit for. And then you prove that through your work you actually belong there. That's always going to work out. So that experience was also really interesting for me, because it was one of the primary experiences that I had done, starting in the end of my 10th grade towards the middle of 11th. Definitely one of the more pioneering aspects of my application, where I realized that okay, this is something that I'm really passionate about and I want to continue working in this space.
Absolutely. And I think I love what you said, that, you have to follow through, right? Like, you didn't have any contacts to know any local leader of Bharatiya Janata Party locally. You just went in, you rammed your way through, and you just kept following up, and you said, hey, this is what I want. Can you give me a way in? So, all you high schoolers out there, if you feel that there is a cause that you're really passionate about, something that you're passionate about, not something that you want to showcase on your application, but something that you're passionate about, please, please, please go ahead and, get in touch with them. The first answer you may hear is most likely going to be a no, but a no does not mean never. You can just push through and, get through it. If Vedaka can, so can you. So I'm pretty sure. I also wanted to take some time to kind of talk about the high school legislative intern at the Delhi High Court. Again, the reason I'm touching on this is a lot of students I've heard, and I speak with so many of these, they tell us that in India as a country, our labor laws are very strict, which means you cannot do any form of paid internship until you turn 18. And thus, getting an internship, which is paid or unpaid, it doesn't matter, gets relatively harder. That to getting it without any influence or knowing the right people at the right place, or pulling strings, is even the more harder. So can you tell me that's why I really wanted you to focus on your high school legislative intern. How did you get it through? You're also yourself not 18, or weren't you 18 when you did this? And how can other people who also want to do similar, or at least an internship in any form, get through?
So, firstly, I will tell you something as someone who is applying to colleges in this era where everything is being done digitally. It is very, very important that you constantly score through the internet for opportunities. I made a LinkedIn as soon as I turned 16. Like, I remember turning 16 and telling my mom that day that, oh my god, I can finally make a LinkedIn account now, because you can see what your peers are doing, you can see what your seniors are doing, especially if you've come from a background where you don't see people who are aiming for the same things that you do. So, like I said at the start of this episode, that I didn't see people around me who wanted to do the same things I did, or rather, I didn't have any particular guiding figure in my school or in my area around me who I could follow in the footsteps of. So be having a platform where you can actually see what these people had done to build their profile before getting accepted into similar institutions, or the kind of things that people who you like want to be in the future, what they're doing, it's very very important. And as I was scrolling on LinkedIn one day, I'd come across an internship at a law firm. It was unpaid. I did it. It was most importantly remote, so I could. I mean, I'm in Delhi, so I could go and anywhere. But I'm also a school going child, so it's not possible for me to be out every day. So weekly at through Zoom meetings and otherwise, observing, going to the High Court during my vacations and observing the litigation procedures there, how the courts are working, and then putting that experience into what I do at my internship really helped me. And my mentor there was absolutely amazing. He really helped me through navigating every bit of this, even when I faced difficult decisions of whether I should, pivot my application niche to something else, or in general, if I had any difficulties with my school life or anything. He's a really old guy, by the way, so he definitely had the sort of experience to help me through all of this, and I'm super grateful for him. Sometimes it feels like some people are destined by God to come into your life and be there as a mentor for you, and he was that for me. And joining that law firm as an intern was one of the best experiences that I could have done, because it not only gave me someone who I can count on as my mentor, but also an exposure to things that were unprecedented for me. Like I was, helping the senior lawyers there and other people who were, fresh out of law schools. I was helping them, draft like memos and petitions. I was actually focusing on what constitutional rights are and, seeing them in practice. It was amazing. And one of the court proceedings that I attended was deliberating upon a petition that could actually, change the lives of people. And it all put it into perspective for me. Like the cause that I'm pursuing is so important for me, and I'm actually really passionate about it. So
Absolutely.
that was um, really really helpful for me. Ultimately, if I had to say, like, how people can pursue similar opportunities, it would be just try to find all of these things online, because there is a plethora of initiatives, opportunities, because people are also actively looking for newer talent, fresher people who they can train. And LinkedIn was one of the best platforms in this sense, because I actually remember stalking around 50 profiles of people who went to Ivy League institutions in the same academic interests as me, and realizing what narratives they had built, what was the common thing, what was the common factor in all of their applications. Doing that research yourself is very important. If someone comes and serves it up on a silver platter to you, you will never value it, you will never ever go through it, you will never ever realize that, okay, this is something that I can translate into my own account. So having people who you can see the life paths of, or the trajectory of, is very important for finding such opportunities. And that is how I discovered this as well. So that's what I'm going to recommend to everybody.
So, the fact that you were not of age, meaning you were not 18, was that not a deterrent in finding an internship? Because a lot of people just say that, while they do come across the regular route, meaning LinkedIn, Indeed, all these job profiles out there, the biggest constraint ends up being the age. How do you convince an employer who's actually bound by labor laws to employ somebody who's underage? How does that work?
So, when we speak of an internship, first of all, making it remote was a very important aspect. Like it being remote was a very important aspect as to why, uh, like I was also eligible for it. Secondly, being there wasn't any payment involved, that as well. Thirdly, it's very important to remember this isn't the first internship I did. This is one of the last internships of my school life that came across as a culmination of everything that I had done before. So I remember telling you that I had done approximately, 100, 150 into schools throughout my school life, and that sort of builds an exposure into how you can communicate with people, how you can present tasks, how you can make yourself useful, how you can win, how you can showcase as to what aspect is important, what aspect isn't, how you can be concise and hit the point when you are delivering something. So it's very important to first bring up the small experiences, then only you can aim for a bigger one. You can't straight away aim for a bigger fish and expect it to hook up on your, fishing rod. You first need to get the smaller ones, and then you go and reach out and target the big one. So I had done, numerous MUNs, numerous internships for non-governmental organizations online. And these days, it's too easy to get experience in various aspects. And it all counts towards something. But the most important aspect here is that never ever think that you are too above something to do. You're that, oh, why should I do this? I remember one of the, starting to middle internships I did, all I had to do was, call people and convince them that, okay, can you be part of this event? Can you be part of this event? Can you be part of this event? And it seems like such a useless no brainer, like menial task, but it really brings you so much learning. You realize how to hit to the point quickly, you realize how to advertise in a way that the person who is on the other end of the phone, who does not want to listen to any promotion at all, will, how they can be, they can relate to this, how they can be convinced for this. And every small thing will definitely count. So it's very very important that students out there know that they will not instantly get something that's good, they will not instantly get an internship. And I know some people who in fact did paid internships as well. Even I was also a paid intern at a debate club now, but the payment here, it's very important. Like it was just 3,000 a month. So that's nothing when it comes to circumventing the labor laws or something like that. So it was well within the limits of that. Even so, like what I'm saying, a paid internship is possible as well, although the remuneration isn't something that's too crazy. But everything is possible. You just have to set your heart onto the target, and realize that there are numerous small steps that will come in between that you will have to do. You can't skip to the last stage. You will need to do small internships in order to build a profile for a larger one. Then you will do many larger internships in order to build your profile for an even better institution. That's how it all works.
Absolutely. And I think I like the idea when you're saying that at the end of the day, it boils down to resilience. Like you can't just wake up one fine day and say, hey, I need this, I want this, and it has to go my way. No work, small or big, you just keep doing what needs to be done. And once you get to, a decent amount of work that's done on your profile, eventually you will get your desired dream internship. So just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I totally understand. So that's that. Before I wrap up this podcast, I wanted to talk to you about your. I wanted to talk to you about your Oxford summer school. I think your resume says that you are one in 1,800 girl, one in 1,800 person people, and the only one from India who made it to the Oxford summer school. So, can you talk a little bit about your application process at the Oxford summer school, Vedika?
Definitely. Actually, it's the number is bigger than that. I think it was around 8,000 people who had applied from India, and I so it was facilitated by the Next Genius Foundation, where where there was a summer program. I mean, there are numerous summer programs being organized at Oxford every year by one organization or the other, and Next Genius Foundation was sponsoring, I think, one child for it all across India, and they had released various essays that the student can do either to get an opportunity to be part of this, or they can, do they had to fill a form to get this opportunity. So I remember one fine day I just came across the form in my mailing list because I'd signed up for everything. Again, it comes here. You need to be online searching for these opportunities. They will never ever come to you. So I'd signed up for every, mailing list possible, from opportunities from youth. I was part of so many different groups that advocated for, students to be part of various different things. So they used to post all of these opportunities, like skillso.co is one. And so I remember that the Next Genius Foundation sent me a mail about this, that they're sponsoring one child to Oxford, and I had filled the form. There were so many different aspects to it, like writing essays and, shooting a video. And I remember just one thing, that I wanted to present myself as someone who has insights that no other child will have. So, showcasing yourself to be the most unique, the most diverse, the most insightful applicant is what is really important. You need to show what sets you apart from everybody else. And Skillzo recommended me to Next Genius, so I'd also asked the founder of Skillzo to. I had sent him my profile, that this is something that I've applied for. This is my profile. Could you please recommend me for this, considering that hold such a large organization and you have helped so many students. Your opinion really matters. So he was impressed with my profile. He said, "Sure, I'll help you with it." And then he contacted the people at Next Genius as well, who told them that, okay, this is a child that I'm recommending for this. And gradually, I got the information that, Vedika Arora, you have been selected to go to Oxford University in the summer of 2025 on a full scholarship. And when I tell you, I was so tremendously happy. And when I went there, I was in the I was in the law course. It was a pre-sessional course for law, and it was absolutely mind blowing. And it made me so much more motivated to work for what I want and to work in this direction, because I could see how um, beautiful this subject was, and I could see how beautiful the journey to getting these things is, and how you realize so much about yourself, how you really try to upgrade yourself into becoming the best person possible. And Oxford's, summer school was that one pathway for me, which made me so much more determined to ensure that I get a full ride at a college as well. And I put in the best amount of effort that I can. It didn't come easy. Throughout the months of September, October, November, December, I did not sleep at all. Like, I was waking till, I was staying up till 4 a.m., waking up uh, early, or sometimes a little later if it was a holiday. Sometimes even on school nights I was staying up trying to draft ideas for essays, because universities like Stanford and all these other prestigious institutions, they ask for so many essays because they really want to see what kind of person you are in order to ensure that you're a correct fit for the school. So just ideating what these essays are. And like, a huge shout out to my organization, Crimson Education. I got a full scholarship at their program, and they helped me with my essay writing process. Like, they never ever told me what to write. They never ever replaced any words that I wrote. My essay mentor, Heather, she was always very particular in ensuring that, okay, Vedika, this doesn't sound like you a little bit. Or, Vedika, I can't see a narrative building here. Can you do something to fix that? So, making me realize my voice, pushing me to write my essays in a way that is, a reflection of who I am. Not doing it for me was also a really important aspect, and my strategist, Mr. Ashish Solanki, was super super helpful when it came across to, because again, as I told everybody in the podcast, that an overarching narrative is extremely important. He helped me, build that, because framing your activities in a way that ties them together is extremely important. And while I get it, that, and I didn't take any paid consulting, so I was again not expecting that, like these people who take paid consultings, they always get such brilliant results. But Crimson, of course, has such a like, it the program that they had blew my mind away. I had access to an essay lab as well. Again, the essay lab which I'm talking about, it means resources from previous people who have applied to cycles, their essays and everything. So online you'll find tons of essays, tons of application profiles. Go through them, especially the ones where you see the major of the person who you are aligned with, and then you can, build a profile that is really aligned with your major. And that has, those three factors that I mentioned. So that was it.
That's good
Oxford
to
was
know.
amazing. And yeah.
Absolutely. So, my last question for the day, because I want to keep it short and I also want to take recommendations, is that was there a certain theme to your application and your essays, right? Like, I don't want to talk about what was the content, but if you had a theme, right? Like, people write about all sorts of stuff. So, what was your Common App essay about? What were your supplementals about? How did you brainstorm that? If you can just guide students on that direction, that would be perfect.
So you never write your essays thinking what is the other person
Perfect. So that is an excellent framework to be writing those essays out there. One last question before I let you go. Any suggestions to your incoming juniors who would be whose aspirational colleges are all these or possibly Stanford? Anything that you would like them to know would that'd be great to kind of put it out there. Perfect. I think great pieces of advice and solitude. I also personally believe that what's meant for you finds a way to you. It may be delayed, but it is never denied. I think that's my philosophy in life. Keep doing what you're doing. If it didn't work out for you, believe me, when you look back, you're gonna just say thank you, God, it didn't work out for me. There's an excellent quote by Warren Buffett on in his autobiography where he says, "Life is supposed to be lived forward and understood backward." So if you're not understanding life at this juncture in time, nothing's making sense. It's because it will make sense someday. So stay put, do what you have to do, and keep working hard, and good things will fall your way. That's essentially how life works. So Vedika, thank you so much for sharing your insights, for sharing about all the good stuff that you did. I'm sure this podcast is going to be super super helpful to all your juniors. You may find yourself. I mean, I'm sure that people are already flooding you with DMs, but once we shout this out on Instagram, I'm sure more and more people would want to reach out to you. But nonetheless, we wish you all the very, very best. Good luck with your entire future at Stanford. And I hope that you sail through with flying dreams, and you get the college, I mean the project of your dreams, and you get everything that you aspire for. May God bless you. Truly appreciate and to have you on. Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude our podcast with Vedika. I hope viewers and listeners, you enjoyed it. If there is a certain university you want us to cover, please feel free to leave it in the comments section, and we would be very, very happy to kind of, cover that and get you all the insights from international students. But for now, thank you so much for your time, everybody. I'll see you next Sunday with another fresh podcast, another student, and another college that we will continue to explore. Thank you so much.